They handed me the pink slip at exactly 8:01 a.m., like they'd practiced it during a TED Talk on how to fire loyal employees without blinking. Weston, my boss's personal yes man, was waiting in the lobby of Novara Dynamics with that empty corporate team spirit smile, the kind usually reserved for wellness webinars or HR-mandated birthday cake. I didn't need coffee that morning. The rage alone was enough to spike my blood pressure. Mrs. Evelyn Hartman chirped the intern whose blazer sleeve still had the thread from a discount tag. Could we chat upstairs real quick? Chat? Right? Like we were about to trade friendship bracelets and talk about dreams. I followed her up the staircase, each heel strike on the tile sounding like a slow countdown to detonation. The HR conference room smelled like expired toner and defeat. 3 of them sat behind the table, early 20s, clearly hired for enthusiasm, not experience. One girl read from a page, like she was auditioning for a college improv group. Due to corporate realignment, your position has been deemed redundant, effective immediately. You are being terminated without call. Stop, I said, holding up one finger, calm as a priest at a poker game. Print that for me. They blinked, stunned. Oh, of course, one stammered, scrambling to the printer. Thanks, I said smoothly, folding the document and sliding it into my leather folio like I was reviewing a menu. Good luck. It wasn't to them. It was to me, because I knew something they didn't. Quick sidebar, if you're still here and haven't subscribed, take 2 seconds and hit that button. 97% of you ghost the video like middle managers after quarterly losses. Help me hit 10,000 subscribers, and I promise the only thing I'll do is pour a fresh cup and bring more chaos just like this. Anyway, back to the implosion. I didn't leave that building like someone who'd just been gutted. I walked out like I'd closed a deal, because most people don't get to write their own eulogy and their comeback. But I'm not most people. I'm Evelyn Hartman. I'm 54 years old, and I spent 21 years at Novara Dynamics. I survived 5 CFOs, 4 brand overhauls, and 1 discrimination lawsuit that got buried so deep it probably hit oil. And I knew the minute that acquisition was announced, my clock was ticking. They didn't have a strategy. Just buzzwords. And they were about to pay for it. Recalibration, Culture 2.0, reinvention. It was all code for one thing: purge anyone over 50 and install kombucha taps to distract from the bloodletting. So 6 months ago, when whispers of a company sale floated across the finance floor at Novara Dynamics like mildew in a motel vent, I didn't panic. I didn't cry in my Subaru or schedule a stress-induced mammogram like Brenda from payroll. No. I got to work surgical, methodical, focused, because tucked deep inside a forgotten clause from a 2012 merger with a defunct software firm was the escape hatch. Not just mine, theirs. A legacy provision, dusty and neglected, but still legally binding, still alive, still dangerous. It had been drafted to protect high-ranking staff from hostile takeovers. No one had cleaned it out. No one even remembered it existed. But I did. And on that chilly Monday morning in Minneapolis, when they handed me my pink slip, they didn't realize they'd lit the fuse. They thought they'd just axed a compliance officer. What they actually did was trigger a multi-million-dollar chain reaction. I took the scenic route home, coffee in hand, not for the buzz, but because I wanted to be comfortable when the fallout began. It started appropriately with a whisper. 6 months earlier, I was microwaving leftover chicken marsala in the break room, when Tyler, the intern from analytics, slid in pale and wide-eyed like he'd just watched a ghost file his taxes. "Don't tell anyone I said this," he whispered, but I overheard Jenny from strategy mention acquisition. He said it like it was contraband. For someone like him, it was just juicy gossip. For someone like me, 53 years old, high salary, low tolerance for nonsense, it was a war horn. I didn't eat the chicken. I didn't respond. I smiled the way a blackjack dealer smiles at someone about to double down on a bad hand. Then I walked straight back to my desk, logged into Novara's crusty old contract archive, and started digging like a raccoon in a dumpster behind legal. The thing about being a compliance director for 21 years, you don't just read policies. You memorize their fingerprints. You remember which mergers had emergency equity language, which severance files hid nuclear clauses? And after 8 hours of scrolling through forgotten PDFs, I found it, Appendix C, Financial Risk Memo, dated October 2012, and inside Clause 7.12b. The trigger. The clause that would burn everything down legally, permanently, and beautifully. Furthermore, the board shall authorize severance multipliers to equal or exceed the accrued value of vested units. Just one sentence, one neutron star of liability buried in legal deadwood. That clause was likely meant to protect the original executives during the 2012 merger, a time bomb wrapped in fine print. But no one ever removed it. No one expected anyone to remember it. And no one, certainly not this new crop of digital darlings, expected someone like me to find it. I didn't report it, didn't print it, I relocated it. If you believe in quiet victories and stories that prove strength isn't always loud, subscribe now, because this is just the beginning of a journey you won't want to miss. Stay with me, and I'll share the next chapter that reveals how the fallout changed everything. Because the real power of revenge isn't in the explosion, it's in the wiring, the placement, the patience. During the next monthly policy review cycle, I submitted a change request using Internal Compliance Form 9C2, one of those obscure administrative forms nobody reads unless there's an SEC subpoena involved. I reworded the clause just slightly enough to make it look like a routine integration update and flagged it under Legacy Continuity Reference Code 2012 Novara Merger. I saved it with a fresh timestamp and renamed the file Appendix C, Financial Risk Memo, PDF. Same name, same bomb, new fuse, and no one noticed. Not HR, not legal, not the VP of Strategy, who once asked me if an NDA counts if it was signed on an iPad. From there, I reverse engineered the entire system, like I was casing a corporate mansion. I tracked the clause triggers through Novara's equity system, mapped their flow through outdated HR termination protocols, and manually tested a dummy run in the sandbox environment. It was still active, still wired. I backed it up to 3 places: one in the corporate archive, one on my encrypted cloud drive, one on a USB drive shaped like a llama wearing sunglasses. Gift from my niece, now carrying the most expensive middle finger in company history. Just for fun, I added a metadata comment inside the file, updated by E. Hartman. Internal audit 04.2/10/23. Not flashy, just a fingerprint, enough to haunt them later. By the end of that week, I wasn't surviving anymore. I was engineering, and then it hit the pastel apocalypse. The new leadership team arrived the following Monday, looking like the cast of a failed fintech startup, hoodies, wireless earbuds, and tote bags stamped with disrupt with purpose. Their ringleader, a guy named Calder, naturally. Not Mr. Calder, just Calder. Because apparently professionalism is outdated. So is respect. They were about to learn otherwise. He had a man bun and a sleeve tattoo of startup milestones, complete with a QR code that linked to his Medium blog titled Leading with Light. His handshake was limp, but his voice had the conviction of a TED Talk no one invited him to give. "We're not here to tear down the culture," he declared during his town hall debut, standing no joke on the break room counter for maximum visionary optics. "We're here to elevate it." By Wednesday, HR had replaced Novara's mission statement with a new slogan, "Legacy is just another word for outdated." It was printed in bold Helvetica over every bathroom mirror, right where your dignity used to live. Then came the culture blitz, ping-pong tables in the cafeteria, a kombucha tap in the legal department, mandatory gratitude journaling on Fridays, layoffs rebranded as career velocity enhancements. Jenny from procurement got walked out holding a succulent and a hug coupon. My title changed overnight from Director of Compliance to Process Whisperer. They revoked my access to legacy finance folders I created. My audit logs were reassigned to a 26-year-old whose biggest credential was intern for a crypto podcast about workplace transparency. I said nothing. I watched from my desk sipping lukewarm coffee like it was sworn testimony. One morning in the break room, Calder approached me wearing joggers with a blazer, tapping furiously on a foldable Bluetooth keyboard. "You've got such powerful Ruth Bader Ginsburg energy," he said with a grin. "You should smile more." "Thanks," I replied flatly. "She's dead." He laughed nervously, then offered me a yoga pass. That's when I knew. The phasing out wasn't coming, it had already begun. My calendar got wiped. I was quietly removed from budget meetings. My login credentials mysteriously reset 3 times in 1 week. When I tried to retrieve policy documentation, I got an error. "You do not have permission to access this content. Please contact your administrator." I was the administrator. They turned the compliance review office into a foosball lounge. I walked past it every morning like it was a crime scene. Every clack of the ball, another unvested stock option spiraling into irrelevance. But I kept showing up, kept logging in, kept smiling just enough to stay invisible. Because what they didn't realize was that the claws were still buried in the system. Quiet, alive, and getting sharper by the day. There was still one room they hadn't reimagined yet. Archive 6B. It smelled like printer dust toner and quiet revenge. It was my cathedral, my armory. I wasn't just reviewing files. I was verifying the detonation sequence. I opened the internal policy systems directory and mapped out every node legacy access points, historical linkages, and the exact conditional triggers buried in HR's termination protocols. The clause I'd embedded months ago, still live. Still traceable in the Atris system's version history. Still tagged as Continuity Protocol Legacy Compliance, REF 2012. Which is corporate speak for touch this and wind up testifying under oath. Then I did a breadcrumb check. Every file movement, edit, and view left a trail. Who accessed what, when, and where it routed next. I followed the audit log like a forensic hound, confirming that Clause 7.12b had successfully wormed its way into the severance payout template, specifically termination code 4C, without cause, post-structural realignment. Bingo. But I needed external confirmation, so I called in a favor. Amy Caldera, Harvard Law XSC Enforcement, boutique contract attorney in D.C., with a reputation for scaring CFOs in 3 languages. I sent her the clause. No context, no fluff. Just the text placement and trigger logic. She called me 20 minutes later. "Jesus Christ, Evelyn. Where did you dig this up?" "Same place you find mold behind everything that looks polished." She barked a single laugh. "It's airtight. If this clause exists in even one version of the severance packet, it's enforceable. If it hits legal, they're required to follow protocol unless they want exposure. And if I'm fired, then it triggers. And if they ignore it, you sue and win. Perfect." I hung up. Then I printed 3 copies, laser printer black and white. I signed one in blue ink, just in case someone tried to contest authenticity later. One went into my home safe. One went into a red folder labeled Meeting Notes, tucked into the bottom of my leather bag. And the third, that one lived digitally encrypted and embedded inside a time-delayed email, scheduled to send to the CFO, head of legal HR, and 3 investor relations staff. I even included the internal press contact. There's always one comms guy desperate to break a real story. I made it easy for him. Subject line, urgent legacy. Clause activation compliance memo 7. 12B message body. Per protocol outlined in Appendix C, this notice confirms activation due to involuntary termination without cause, post-acquisition. Attachment 1, PDF, the real brilliance. The email was set to delay send. Trigger time, 9:01 a.m. Date TBD contingent on one thing, manual cancel by 8:59 or let it fly. It was my kill switch, my quiet detonation. All I had to do was nothing. In a world full of fast talkers and backstabbers, patience is the sharpest weapon. And mine had been honed to a razor's edge. The clause was loaded. The fuse lit. Now all that was left was for someone to be arrogant enough to pull the trigger. The espresso hit my tongue at exactly 8:59 a.m. Smooth, bitter, and laced with closure. I sat outside a cafe across from Novara Dynamics headquarters. Sunlight dancing across the mirrored glass facade like the universe was winking at me. I didn't bring my laptop. Didn't need it. My hands cradled a ceramic mug like I was warming them over the final campfire of a long corporate war. At 9:01 a.m., the email released itself. No fireworks, no cinematic soundtrack, just one silent click deep inside a Novara server and the quiet awakening of a buried command. They'd planned to delete me from their system by 10:00 a.m. I got there first. The address engine pinged the compliance server, which triggered the equity management portal, which flipped an internal flag labeled Trigger Mass Vesting, Clause 7.12b. By 9:03, over 200 internal emails had been pushed out. Subject line: Congratulations, RSUs, vested in full body. Please note accelerated vesting has been triggered under Legacy Clause Protocol. It started quietly. A single Slack message, then another, then 10. Anyone else get a stock alert? Why did it say I vested? Is this a glitch? At 9:06 a.m., the VP of Engineering's assistant walked into his office looking like someone had unplugged her soul. Did you authorize mass vesting across your org? He hadn't. That's when Finance's alert system exploded. Unusual options activity detected. Unforecasted RSU vesting exceeds threshold. Compensation spike anomaly. They thought it was a bug, a coding mistake. Some intern hopped up on cold brew who deployed bad logic into production. Then they opened the file. Appendix C, financial risk. Memo.pdf timestamped. Legally signed. Embedded 2 months prior. Metadata updated by E. Hartman. By 9:15, legal was in freefall. I pictured it vividly: a junior legal associate, 3 hours of sleep protein bar, half-chewed corporate wellness badge dangling from his lanyard. He'd skim the clause match, it to the protocol tree, realize what it meant, and scream. Meanwhile, I was under a cafe umbrella across the street, sipping the last of my espresso, like I had nothing left to lose and all the time in the world. A woman in a navy pencil skirt hustled past on her phone, voice clipped and panicked. No, I don't know why it's firing. Check the legacy compliance log. Just check it. And somewhere inside, they were doing just that. A friend from inside pinged me through a private Discord burner we'd used back when the first layoff started. A Slack thread had already leaked Jack Urgent Finance Ops, who approved 200 plus RSU vestings. Who the hell is E. Hartman? Why is this PDF in the legal folder? Why is it signed the cracks had started? And I said, nothing. Didn't post, didn't gloat, didn't even smirk. I just watched as the carefully manicured facade of post-acquisition synergy began tearing apart one clause at a time. The detonator had clicked, but the actual explosion that was still climbing up the pipeline. I wanted a front row seat when it blew, and blow it did with a Zoom meeting titled Urgent Unexplained Equity Trigger. I wasn't on the call, but a transcript made its way to me, courtesy of someone in accounting who still owed me lunch and a favor. Call it even. Gerald Beam, the CFO 5-time firer of non-essential assets and 3-time recipient of Forbes' Most Forgettable Smile, was already sweating before his camera clicked on. His fake background showed a minimalist office with a fake plant and a fake degree. His face, however, was very real and very pale. Okay. He coughed glasses, fogging. Let's get alignment here. Alignment corporate for grabbing a mop while the ship takes on water. Lane, the VP of product, chimed in wearing his usual Patagonia vest. Half my team just got full vesting notices. No exits, no transfers, just boom, everything unlocked. Same here, another voice said. My whole data org's equity matured. Compliance alerts are firing. Then legal piped in a junior associate, breathless. We found something. A clause in a file labeled Appendix C, Financial Risk Memo. Updated recently. Metadata confirms it was changed during a compliance review. Who touched it? Beam snapped. The associate glanced at his screen. Dated by E. Hartman. Silence. You could feel it. My name hung in the air like cigarette smoke in a church. Beam muted his mic. You know that silence. The kind where someone's throwing things just off camera. Meanwhile, legal Slack thread was in full implosion. Another leak hit my burner Discord. Compliance, WTF, who reactivated the old severance clause. Is this a breach? Why is there a hard-coded trigger who is E. Hartman? And why is her name on every doc? Wait, wasn't she fired this morning? Finance scrambled. They tried to cancel the RSU vesting manually, but it was too late. The ledger had already processed the transactions. The vestings were logged, time-stamped, and finalized. Notifications had gone out. Shares allocated. In more than a few cases, employees were already staring at dashboards, showing enough equity to put a down payment on a lake cabin. Undoing that would require consent from 200 people who just got surprise wealth. Good luck. They flagged the servers, halted the equity batch processor, pulled logs dating back to 2012. Still couldn't figure out how a clause written over a decade ago had slipped through their filters. Meanwhile, I was across the street biting into a ham croissant and watching the building like it owed me rent. Every few minutes, another alert. Another Slack message leaked. Someone found the signed PDF buried in the HR archive. Time-stamped, initialed, embedded into the severance workflow with a still active compliance form ID. Not a glitch, not a breach, just policy. Perfectly preserved, and I knew what would come next. They'd try to spin it, pin it on a loophole, blame legacy systems. Too late. The choke points they thought they controlled gone. The systems they assumed were airtight compromised. The employees they thought were asleep wide awake. I didn't need to say a word. My signature was doing all the screaming. By 10:17 a.m., the boardroom was on metaphorical fire, though I wouldn't have minded seeing some actual scorch marks. The emergency call was off the record, unlisted, and confidential. But nothing inside Novara Dynamics stayed secret for long, not when the walls leaked harder than the plumbing. 10 board members, 1 CFO, 0 answers. The acquisition they'd bragged about just last week, now $27 million overweight. And that's not a rounding error. That's we accidentally funded a small hospital level of bad. Most of it came from those RSU conversions. Fully vested, irrevocable. The number danced across internal reports like a ghost with a calculator, 27,403, 881.42. They tried to blame a system bug. But the logs weren't broken. They were immaculate. Every equity trigger was tied to a legal clause no one in that room remembered ever approving. A clause that now looked suspiciously like corporate sabotage buried deep inside decades-old compliance code. They called in risk management, legal, damage control teams. They even dragged in a poor intern from investor relations, looking like he hadn't slept since the press release hit the wire. On the emergency video call, one board member, a woman with 3 hyphenated last names and a yacht named after herself, leaned into her webcam and spat out, "Who the hell is Evelyn Hartman?" Another voice responded, "She was terminated this morning." A pause. The CFO cleared his throat, visibly uncomfortable. She authored the policy file, signed it, cross-referenced it during the last compliance audit. "It's logged as official protocol," the voice continued. "We failed to rescind it after the acquisition was finalized." By 10:22 a.m., investor chatter started leaking onto Twitter. At Equity Watchdog, police car emojis flashed as whispers spread of a post-acquisition clause bomb inside Novara Dynamics. Sources reported mass RSU vestings just cost the company 8 figures. Trending hashtags, Yast Novara, Elasti corporate governance, Nasty Datsi clause, Desi gate, Yasti merger meltdown. Fun fact, Novara's longtime compliance director was let go that very morning. And the clause she planted 6 months ago now wrecking their capitalization table. Chess, not checkers. Brain, not brawn. Then my phone buzzed. A voicemail from Emily. She was my mentee once. Came to me fresh out of college, nervous, eager, quietly brilliant. I taught her everything. How to write policies that read like riddles, how to document without exposing yourself, how to smell fraud like burnt toast. She was still inside. I pressed play. Evelyn, I don't know what's happening, but legal is freaking out. People are saying your name. Did you do something? Because if you did, holy shit, holy shit. There was a pause, a sigh, like she half wanted me to answer. To confirm the legend forming in the chaos, I hit delete. Not out of malice, but necessity. I couldn't be part of this anymore, not even as a legend. They wanted to erase me, a ghost, a redundancy. Now I was the clause that burned down their valuation. And I still had espresso on my breath. At exactly 11 a.m., the quarterly earnings call began live recorded and translated into 3 languages for international investors. By then, the fuse had curled tight against the charge. The sparks were already dancing inside those glass walls. I sat in a downtown cafe with velvet chairs overpriced by a barista named Scotty, watching the live stream on my tablet. The CEO's voice came through tinny, but determined, like a man trying to hold back a storm while describing the sunrise. Today marks a new chapter for Novara Dynamics. The CEO began his confidence oozing through gritted teeth. We've successfully navigated our first post-acquisition quarter with 8% year-over-year growth and positive forward momentum. His jaw looked like it was bench-pressing panic. They were desperately trying to hold the line. I took a bite of my biscotti and waited. 10 minutes in a voice cut through the polished PR fog. It was Rachel Lefebvre from Market Line Financial. Tenacious, well-informed, and famously allergic to corporate spin. Can you comment? She asked the CEO, Jonathan Cooley, on the sudden mass vesting event reported this morning, apparently triggered by a dormant severance clause. Silence. A flicker in Cooley's eye. The unmistakable sound of someone unmuting, then instantly regretting it. I'm not sure I follow Rachel Cooley, said a bit too fast. If there was such a clause, it would be immaterial. Rachel didn't blink. Reports indicate over 200 employee RSUs vested due to a policy clause embedded in an archived compliance file. The clause originated in 2012 but was recently refiled under the name E. Hartman. Are you saying that's immaterial? You could hear someone inhale sharply in the background, probably the CFO trying not to vomit on his keyboard. Cooley's lips curled like he'd bitten into a lemon and couldn't find a trash can. That document was not actively known to leadership. We are investigating its origin and legitimacy. He didn't finish the sentence. Someone leaked the file live right into the investor chat window. PDF name Appendix C Financial Risk Memo Caption Clause 7.12b, updated by E. Hartman, triggered 200-plus RSU vestings. Enjoy! It was like dropping a lit match into a fireworks truck. Investor questions spiraled. Twitter erupted. At MKT's snark breaking, Novara Dynamics was nuked mid-call by a compliance clause. 27 million in RSUs just vanished. Hartman bomb. Messenger equity. Warrior. Clause gate. You mean to tell me a 53-year-old compliance director they fired this morning buried a financial landmine 6 months ago? And it worked. Stock prices, which had been wobbling like a nervous deer, dropped to their knees, $48.90, $46.15, 42 ganayos, 0.3978. My biscotti snapped in half as I watched the ticker count down like a countdown to irrelevance. Cooley stammered something about legacy risk protocols and a robust investigation, but no one was listening. His voice became background noise to the spectacle. I adjusted the brightness on my tablet, zipped my second espresso, and smiled. They'd named it the Hartman bomb. My name trending, not for scandal, not for shame, but for engineering the cleanest corporate takedown without raising my voice or leaving my chair. I leaned back in the velvet chair, a storm of market volatility swirling on the screen like abstract art. I didn't need revenge. I had footnotes in history now. The email came through at 2:03 p.m., subject line NDA rescinded, Novara Dynamics legal notice. Short, sterile, terrified. Ms. Hartman, due to ongoing investigations and unforeseen legal vulnerabilities related to recent equity vesting events, Novara Dynamics is rescinding its previously offered mutual non-disclosure agreement. Please consider all terms voided effective immediately. Translation: they couldn't afford to keep me silent anymore, not because I was loud, but because everything I needed to say had already detonated in their earnings report. The media had caught wind. Headlines like "Clause that cracked the cap table" and "How one compliance director outmaneuvered a billion-dollar acquisition" were circulating fast. I skimmed the stories but wasn't hungry for attention. My appetite had been satisfied by the slow, sweet implosion of a system that thought it could outsmart its own architect. At 2:26 p.m., my phone buzzed again. A text from Amy, my lawyer. "They're trying to claw back vested equity, claiming you manipulated policy for personal gain." I smiled. The digital trail was too clean, every move within protocol. "You're clear. Congrats." I stared at the screen for a long beat, then powered the phone off. Not airplane mode. Off. I didn't need to hear from anyone else. Not the media, not HR, not the communications officer who once asked me to tone down the legalese in a fraud report. Not even Emily, who knew everything without me saying a word. By then, I was already on the interstate windows down sky-wide and blue like a second chance stretched thin across the horizon. My car, a 2011 Volvo with heated seats and a glove box full of peppermint gum, rumbled steadily beneath me like a warhorse that had earned its retirement. The Minneapolis skyline receded in my rearview mirror. That glass box of betrayal grew smaller and smaller until it became exactly what it had always been, an overpriced cube filled with people who thought ping-pong tables could replace wisdom. The radio was off. I preferred the sound of the wind. For the first time in 21 years, I didn't have a badge. I didn't have a title. I didn't have an inbox flooding with requests. What I had was leverage turned legend, an old clause resurrected into corporate folklore, a system that forgot who built it, reminded one signature at a time. I cracked the window a little more and let the air rush in, lifting strands of hair like they too had been waiting to exhale. I didn't burn the place down. I just handed them a lit match and watched them juggle gasoline. They thought I was a relic. Turns out I was a relic with a trigger. They handed me a pink slip. I handed them a financial obituary. "Big thanks for watching, you sneaky seniors. Subscribe to keep the coffee pot brewing revenge. Your ex-colleagues won't know what hit them." If you've ever felt overlooked, underestimated, or erased in your own workplace, know this: you're not alone. I faced the coldest betrayals, but I turned quiet strength into a powerful comeback. Your voice matters even when the system tries to silence you. If my story resonated with you, please leave a comment, share your own experiences or words of encouragement. Together, we can build a community that values resilience and justice. Remember, sometimes the smartest moves happen in silence, and patience can be your fiercest weapon. Stay strong, stay sharp, and never let anyone write your ending for you.